Ladies and gentlemen, Amy Kochek is about to come on and talking about how to really own your story, free your story, and create your success story. So if you're the type of person who really wants to own who you are and use that, leverage that to make a big impact in the world, definitely stay tuned because we're going to dive in. Specifically, I want to talk to you because you're becoming your greatest possible self. You're showing up, you're growing yourself, you're learning, you're doing the personal development. I want to support you however I can. If that's coming on the 12-hour marathon as a guest, if that's launching your own podcast, that's attending our Bali Flow and Fire retreat in November, let's talk. Would love to be a part of your journey and just be another step to becoming your greatest possible self. You can contact me via email, chris@beyourgps.com. You can find me on Instagram @IamMillionaireChris and Facebook.com/th3burns. I look forward to hearing from you about your greatness, okay? Next up is the iTunes review of the week. This week it's by Ari. Ari says, Chris's energy to help others to become their greatest possible self is really empowering. You can feel how he's being honest, laid back, and genuinely wants to help listeners to get the best out of each episode. Absolutely, Ari. Thank you so much for the review. And if you want a chance to get shouted out on a future 12-hour live stream marathon all day long as the review of the week, go to beyourgps.com/iTunes or search Greatest Possible Self on the iTunes store and give us a review there. Thank you so much for doing that in advance, and I appreciate you. Let's keep rocking and becoming our GPS together. I'm going to introduce Amy in just a second. Before that, though, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, be ready to take notes, because this woman is going to share some gold to help you grow into your greatness, own your story, and I think that's like one of the most powerful things that we can do, so you don't want to miss a single moment of this interview. Make sure you stay all the way through till the end so you can continue growing into your GPS. Let's introduce Amy. Amy Kochek owns a full-service writing business that offers coaching for writers, ghostwriting, editing, and interactive breakthrough seminars using the power of your story. Her clientele ranges from local businesses, influencers, entrepreneurs, coaches, and consultants, and the goal is simple: using the power of your story to impact your life and the lives of your target audience. A byproduct of sharing your story is growing your business, building your brand, and solidifying your passion and purpose. The most powerful asset every person possesses is their story. And Amy helps organize, refine, and create engaging content that will attract the right audience and turn them into recurring fans and customers. She is based out of St. Pete, where you can find her at area coffee shops behind a laptop or chatting with the locals. And we're blessed to have Amy with us today. Amy, are you ready to rock the house, Superwoman?
I'm ready. Let's
Boom,
do it.
you're ready. Let's do it. All right, we are live and becoming your greatest possible self. Amy, let's dive into the theme of today, which is dream destinations. What does that mean to you, Amy?
Dream destinations. Well, I feel like that's twofold, right? So like dream destinations physically is places that you want to go that you feel like are where you'll feel at peace, restful, the idea of unencumbered by life, like just relaxing. So that's like the dream destination physically. And then I feel like mentally, emotionally, it's like, where can I find my peace and my rest? The same way that I go on vacation and I go to a resort or I go to a beach because I need to hear the waves, I need tranquility, I need rest. It's like the same thing in life. I feel like so many of us are on this journey to find, where can I go? What can I do to find the authentic version of me so that I can rest and feel tranquil and content? Yeah. So that would be dream destinations.
So good. You're so concise. I love it. I can tell you have a way with words, Amy. Thank you so much for sharing about dream destinations. Let's talk about how you serve your clients. I mentioned it a little bit in your intro, and in your own words, tell us about who you are, what you stand for, what your clients come to you for.
So, I always say that I'm all things story related. So I do a number of things through my business, which is I coach potential writers, people who want to share their story, people who have maybe already shared their story and they just want to refine it, people who are just looking to write better. So I do coaching, I do ghostwriting, which is where I help people who have a story to share and they're able to articulate it. They just, when it gets on paper, it gets lost in translation, the power of it. I'm an editor. So everything I do is based in story because, like I said, I believe that the most powerful thing that you possess is your story. And I lived that out in my own life because I made many transitions in my life, but the main thing that caused me to make that transition was I wrote my story. I wrote a book.
Mm.
The book at first was like this nonfiction, spiritually dogmatic, telling people this is what you need to do to change. But what happened is that at the beginning of the book, I ended up sharing all these like super personal details about myself that I had never shared with anyone. And just writing it on paper set me free.
Mm.
So that kind of set me out on my journey and my passion to do what I'm doing, which is just to help people understand the power that they have inside. Like so many people seek outside themselves, right? Like we read everybody else's books or we listen to everybody else's story and we're empowered by it. We think, man, that's so good. How do I get to that point? Or how do I have that much influence, without realizing that it's inside. Every answer that you need, every bit of motivation that you need, every breakthrough that you need is found in your story. It's just learning how to get that out without shame and guilt attached to it, and look at your story and realize this is gold. Everything. Nothing in my life has just happened. Nothing in my life has happened to me. Everything in my life has happened for me. I just have to shift my perspective and learn how to take my life and use every opportunity for it to teach and help me grow.
Gold. I love it. Amy, this is powerful. And I want to go back into the journey and talk about where did this desire to even write your story in the first place, where did that come from?
So I'm going to do the condensed version because I can be a little wordy. So
pun intended.
I grew up very religious, and anytime I talk about this, I want to honor my upbringing. First of all, I don't say this as a way to ridicule it. I'm grateful for how I grew up, but I did grow up extremely religious in a very dogmatic, rule-driven religious environment, and I was in a church, and they were having a conference at the time. And at the time, I was teaching high school English, and I was asked to teach a lesson on integrity, which was very ironic at the time. So I was asked to teach this lesson on integrity, and I taught the lesson. And once I taught it, they loved it. So then I taught it once, twice, and in the span of, I think it was like 6 or 7 months, I had taught it like 8 times. I kept having to teach it. And every time I would teach it, somebody would say, "Oh my goodness, this is a book. Like, you need to write a book." That was not even in my mind frame. I didn't have a bucket list. I thought I was going to teach till the day I died. So I was like, I'm not writing a book. Like, that's not a goal of mine. But every time I would teach the lesson, the content would become richer and I would get more. And I was like, the content was changing me. Like something was happening inside of me.
Yes.
So, I remember one of my friends challenged me. He said, just write an intro to your book. If you were to write a book, what would the intro be? And I opened my mind to like, okay, I'll just write the intro and nothing's going to happen after this. And the crazy thing is that I woke up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. I don't wake up. Like, I'm a good sleeper. And I woke up dead out of my sleep and something was pulling me to write. I am not that person. Let me tell you, that's not me. Right. And I sat down and I started writing this intro, and then the intro became chapter 1. And everything that's coming out of me is my own personal story and my struggle with integrity. Because I'm growing up in this super religious system, and I'm following all the rules, and I'm doing what everybody's telling me to do, and I'm exhibiting what's supposed to be the good religious girl. But inside of me, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of questions. I felt like I wasn't me anymore. So as I'm writing this out, I'm looking at my life. Now, I've lived it. I lived my life. So it's not like I'm presenting new information. It's just for the first time in my life, the thoughts and the feelings that I had learned how to shove down, right? We learn how to shove our authentic self down so well. The thing with writing is it becomes so therapeutic because what it is, it's like a free flow. It's a dump of everything inside. Yeah. And it's like watching my life on a movie screen in front of me, and I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, I've lost myself. Like, the Amy I am right now this is not me. And I wrote the book and self-taught myself how to self-publish because I didn't go to a class. I wasn't taking courses. I wasn't coached. I'm just a huge believer that when the universe gives you an assignment, you'll get the resources you need to complete that assignment. And that was my assignment for that moment. And I self-published the book, and it took 2 years for me to live out the essence of that book, which is living your life with integrity, having who you are on the inside be who you are on the outside. And once I ended up going on that journey 2 years later, I picked up my life and moved. I left the religious system that I was in. And then I started helping other people write books, because people are like, oh, you wrote a book and it was so great. And how do you do it? And what's the process? And I was like, okay, I don't really know, but let me show you what I learned. And then I had a friend come up to me, and she was like, I want to write my story. And I looked at her story, and I'm like, I don't think that that's good. I think I can help you make that better. And then I became a ghostwriter without knowing what ghostwriting was or what they do. Yep. Once again, it was just like the universe was guiding me and giving me the tools that I needed to do it. And even when I moved here, I live in St. Pete, Florida. Mm-hmm. My job to get me here was a personal assistant. And I was an awful personal assistant. Like, I was not good. But that job opened up an opportunity. So the guys that I was working for as a personal assistant, after a month, they were like, oh, we need a writer. Without me even telling them what I did. And I seamlessly transitioned to ghostwriting for them. So I want to say that it happened all by accident, but I kind of don't believe that. I just believe that once I started to become open, and really when I started to look at my life and own my life and say, I don't know that I'm going down the path that I'm meant to go down. And this other path is really scary because it's unknown and it's risky. But once I went on that risky path, it's like every step that I needed to take me to the next step was revealed. And I started my own business from it, doing what set me free in the first place, because I so believe in the power of it.
I love it. Amy is super, super powerful. Tons of gold in there. I want to go back to the moment that you said it took 2 years to live your message in that book about integrity. What was happening in those 2 years?
So I truly believe that who we are is who we've always been, right? Mm-hmm. It's just that life events have a way of putting layers on top of our authentic self, right? And everybody's layers come from different spaces. For me, it came from dogmatic religion. Mm-hmm. And in those 2 years, I'm still doing all the things, right? I'm still attending all the services. I'm still tithing. And none of these things, once again, I want to honor. I'm not bashing religion. I just know for me, I had a lot of questions. And during those 2 years, I started to really ask myself a lot of questions about the way I was living. And was this the way, did I really believe what I said I believed? Did I really connect to this dogma and these rules? Did I really connect to the message that I'm basing my life off of? Like, everything I did and said and my choices were all connected to this belief system. And as I started to really question myself, question the belief system, questions I had never let myself ask, or if I did ask, I would quickly pull back because you weren't supposed to ask questions. You just did, So I started opening myself up to the hard questions and letting myself discover what had led me there, and I always say, like, to really have change in your life, you become a private investigator of your own life, So I started to really look back and look back at moments in my life where I struggled, and like, it was almost like the real Amy was trying to break out, right? She was trying to have a voice and say, this isn't what we really want. And this is not true to who you are. But because I was in an environment that did not honor the authentic voice of Amy, it was like I had to say, quiet. Yeah. That's not acceptable here. Be quiet. We got to, go along to get along. But after I wrote my story and I released it, it's like I started to give that Amy permission. Wow. I told her, I hear you. And I'm giving you a voice now. But then here's the problem. When she started to get a voice, I was like, whoa, whoa, this is too much, because when I gave her voice, the voice said, we've got to make some drastic changes. The voice said, we don't want this anymore. We want to do something different. And there was conflict, right? Like, it's never easy to live your authentic life.
Right, especially if it's different than what the momentum has been up until now. There's people, there's relationships, there's love, there's, value in what we have been getting. There's like a payoff in what we have been experiencing, and to break those ties or to break the connection with what was and create a new what will be and what is, like that can cause disconnection. It might require disconnection from hanging out in those old places, doing those old activities, doing those old habits to create a new reality.
Yeah. I have found this with every person that I've worked with, right? Every single person that I've worked with that has written their story or told their story, when they're done, they are never the same. Never. And that doesn't mean like they go out and do something drastic. Some of them have, right? Some of them have like told their story, written their story. Oh, I'm falling apart over here. They've told their story, they've written their story, and they make like drastic decisions, right. like myself. It's like this telling of the writing of their story or telling their story. They're like, I didn't even realize this about myself. Like, this is something I never even realized. But everyone that's had the opportunity to tell or write their story has been challenged by their own truth. And it's usually the truth that we keep shoving down. Wow. But it's like, once you write that story out, then it becomes a process. And sometimes it's a tug of war. Because the tug of war is between what you really want, but then the other side is what that's going to cost you. Like that was the tug of war, because I knew, now if I let this Amy out, she's not going to want to go back down. Like, she's not going to go back. So once I started to let my voice be heard and really start to make changes in my life, it was traumatic, because I lost everything. I lost a community of support. I lost friends. I lost, strong connections with people. I lost a whole belief system. I started at zero, ground level. When I moved to St. Pete, Florida, literally the only thing I took was my vehicle and my clothing. That was it, which was pretty evident with what I took emotionally. I took myself and literally had to start over. And that's the power of telling myself, this is the narrative of my life thus far. This is what I'm seeing with my narrative. I can either keep going this way and I can keep my narrative as it is, or I can say, I want a new narrative. This is not what I want for the rest of my life. But I didn't realize how much it would cost me, because it cost me everything, which is usually pretty evident with people who make major changes in their story, with their story.
Yeah, I love this. And this is really, really powerful for anyone out there who's on the journey of becoming the best version of themselves. At some point, there's probably multiple points where there's like these identity crises where we have to give up what we have gotten, what we have used, leveraged, what we have become to get to where we want to go. It's really powerful what you're sharing. And I want to talk about, you mentioned like just really having clarity on the new narrative, right? You didn't know what that narrative was, who you wanted to become, and then you started going through that process. What has changed, or what was the evolution that's happened since saying, hey, I know I need to create a new narrative, to where you're at right now? Like, what do you see as that new narrative that you're living?
I don't have to have all the answers, first of all. It's okay for me to say, I don't know, which before was very scary. Like, you had to know. There was no choice that you could make that you couldn't follow with, here's why I'm making these decisions. Here's all the people I've talked to make sure this decision is okay, because accountability was huge. Had to filter all my decisions through other people. And there was so much fear. Like, even before I could make a decision, there was so much fear of, is this going to be the right decision? And if I make this decision and it's wrong, could it change my whole life? Could I miss it? Could I miss my destiny and my purpose? everything was there was so much hinged on one decision.
Yeah.
And what I have done now is I make choices based on what I believe my internal voice, my intuitive voice is saying, which for years I never even allowed her to speak. Like I said, that Amy I shoved down. I let my intuition guide me, but I give myself permission to make decisions even if I don't know the outcome, even if I'm unsure of how it's going to work out, because I don't need 100 different voices telling me 100 different things and making me feel schizophrenic about my life. You know, really, I just need to be clear with who I am and just start making decisions, even if I fail or even if it doesn't go well. That's okay, because there's learning in the process. So being able to say, I don't know, has been huge. And then the second thing is unlearning to learn. So learning how to let go of so much of what I was taught, because I didn't know how to make the difference between what I believed and what I resonated with, and then what was put upon me to believe. And I embraced it because I respected those people so much.
Wow.
And their opinion of me and their affirmation of me and their acceptance of me meant everything. So I took on a whole belief system and a whole lifestyle because of other people. So when I left and I started over, I said, I have to unlearn everything. I have to start at ground level. And first of all, I gotta get accustomed to who is Amy. What do I even like? You know, as like base level as that sounds, it's like sometimes we can be so consumed with people pleasing and so consumed with everybody else's wants and desires for our lives that we lose ourselves in the process. So it's like I've had to go base level to, you know, what do I like doing? What do I want to do with my life? How do I want to spend my free time? What kind of friends do I want around me? What kind of home environment do I want to create? So being okay with being a novice at life and starting over, even though I'm in my 30s, you know, like sometimes I joke with my friends. I'm like, I feel like I'm having like the same internal emotional issues that every 13-year-old on the planet has, just because like there wasn't a space for me to do that, because you were told everything. You were told, this is what you believe, this is what you like, this is what you don't like, these are the types of people you hang out with, these are the types you don't. So it was like a robot, like, okay, good, thus saith you, let me do it. So now it's giving myself permission to figure it out, and not be afraid to say, I don't have this figured out at all. I'm a novice.
And it's being curious, right? Like you're curious about what you like, what you're passionate about, and a lot of people have just been so caught up in that momentum and doing what other people tell them to, what's expected of them, society, etc., that they're not like, what lights me up? What am I passionate about? What do I want to do? How can they be the investigator of that life? How can you like look back? Because there's breadcrumbs. Usually people like it might not be a big sign that says this is who you are. This is what you're meant to be. Most of the time it's not. 99.9% of the time it's not. But like you can look back on the journey and say, what were those times that lit me up? What were those moments? What were the events, the circumstances, the places where I felt myself come alive, where I felt like connected to my true self? And simply being in the pursuit of that question and the answers to that question, like you start to even pay attention in the present moment. Okay, where do I need to go? Where can I go in the present to be able to create that same kind of feeling? And you start to attract that into your life because we're looking for it.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like when I'm a big believer in asking open-ended questions. And I'm also a big believer that your life will answer. So a lot of times when I'm searching for answers, I don't go outside of myself because I spend so much time going outside of myself. So, and this has been a difficult journey for me, because like I said, any choice that I made about my life, I never made it by myself. You weren't supposed to. You are getting everybody's opinion on you at all times. And now I ask myself, specific questions, and I believe that my life will answer only if I'm paying attention. Your life is always answering.
Yep.
But sometimes you're just not paying attention. Your life is always teaching you. But sometimes, like I said, we believe our life is just happening to us and not for us. So, like, for example, I was talking to my therapist, and we were talking about just romantic relationships, right? And she was asking me, she was like, well, what do you really want? And once again, I'm in the unlearning process. So I don't know, because I know what I was told, and I know the type of person I was told. You're supposed to attract this type of person. It's supposed to look like this and feel like this. So I told her, I said, well, I don't know. So she said, well, that's a good place to start. She said, maybe you should ask that question. So I asked my life that question. I said, what do I really want? If I were to really sit down and think about a lifetime committed partner, or a long-term healthy romantic relationship, what would that look like for me? Right. And 2 months after that, right, it was like every other week something would happen, a situation would happen, and it would just get me closer and closer to this answer of what I really want. And after, it was like at the 2-month mark, I had this like epiphany, and I was like, this is what I want. That's what I want. And it was because I was paying attention to my life, and all these circumstances, situations, people were coming in my life, and I was getting closer and closer to the clarity that I needed. And I say that with everything, every desire that you have, or the type of life that you want, it's so easy for us to say, I don't want that, or that's not what I want. Okay, great. But what do you want?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
and
I
when
think it's important to start with that question for people who are like totally unclear, and maybe they haven't learned how to trust themselves and know what they want of their true desires. It's like, okay, well, what don't I want first? Like, let's just get clear on that. Let's chalk that up on the board, but don't stay there. Like, don't keep focusing on that. Say, okay, that's what I don't want. Opposite side, what do I want? And we can use that to kind of like push off of, and to direct our North Star, so to speak.
Yeah. The brain is a very powerful muscle, right? And like, when you ask your brain open-ended questions, you are prompting your brain to do what it was created to do, which is to create, right? Which is to go to work. But if all you're prompting your brain with is what you don't want, and what you are displeased with, and what's frustrating you, it stops right there. Like, there's no creating after it. So if I just keep saying, I'm so frustrated with my job. I hate my job. I hate my career. Okay, great. That's a like bump your head against a wall type of statement, right? So instead of saying that, you shift it and say, what opportunities could I create, or what opportunities are happening in my life right now that are prompting me to take the next step in my career? What hidden talents are inside of me that I don't even realize, that are going to come out and show me how I need to pivot in my career? Right? It's like a totally different perspective. It doesn't take away from the frustration. Yeah, that's there. We've already established that. But when you shift it and you start asking, once again, you start asking your life questions and prompting your brain to go to work and asking these open-ended questions, what then happens is you're alerting the universe, you're alerting your brain, listen, I'm looking, I'm waiting for opportunity, I'm paying attention, I know you're about to teach me, my pen and pad are out, and I'm ready to take notes. So go about doing what you were created to do, which is teach me, so that I can move forward with clarity.
So Amy, I hear a lot of awareness and, so to speak, enlightenment about the brain, about psychology, about how life operates, principles. And of course, like, the first thing I say is, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know anything, right? So show me what I get to know, right? And I also see that you're really studious in your craft and your expertise in creating content and writing. Was that always like a priority for you, or did that develop over time?
So, as far as writing is concerned, this is so crazy. Writing, reading. I've always been a talker. From a very young age. I love conversation. I love words. I love talking to people. I've always been nosy. Seems like a harsh word, but I've always just been very interested in people's lives and people's stories. So the passion for me has always been there to really get to know people and just not just know superficially. Like, I
Right.
just really want to know. I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know what's underneath all of that.
Mm.
So that's always been there, and just kind of grown and morphed into what it is now. As far as the writing is concerned, I'm not. I was not a writer. Like, I didn't sit down and I'm not a journaler. I'm still not. Um, if I do journal, it's just I feel like journaling. You know, like some
Mm.
people are like adamant, like every morning they
Right.
get up.
Every day.
Yeah. The minute that somebody puts a rule to something and it's like every day, I'm already like, oh whoa, I can't. I can't. But as far as writing is concerned, it never it wasn't a thing for me.
Mm.
Um I mean, I did a lot of writing when I was in college, obviously, because my major was English and I was an English teacher. So it was present, but it was from a scholarly perspective and an educational perspective. And it started to shift to a more creative side only when I started writing my own story,
Mm.
and then really started exploring the power behind that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. And what's the little one's name who's barking?
Ugh. Listen, I've had people calling me on the computer. I've been dropping stuff. This is real life. This is Marley. Marley, if you follow me on social media, you've seen her a million times.
Oh, so
She's the
cute.
best. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. So awesome. Well, appreciate Marley being there. I'm sure she's a source of inspiration and
She is.
amazing companionship for you
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
just,
She is definitely.
channel your creative juices. So I want to talk about your show. I know you have a show and you create video content, do interviews with people. Tell us
Yeah.
when that became important part of your journey and why.
So this is really funny. Well, I guess not funny. So everything in my life, like I said, I'm just such a huge advocate of organic flow,
Mhm.
and that things that happen in my life usually start as thoughts, like this would be cool if, you
Mm.
know. And I don't feel the need to force it. I don't feel the need to control it. It just starts as a thought. So I had a thought, and at first I was like, I want to interview people and just ask them to tell their story.
Yeah.
And I want to put it online.
Hmm.
So when I initially started doing it, it was right before my dad had passed, and I had collected like 3 or 4 interviews, but they weren't really interviews. I just put a microphone on people and sat them in front of a phone with a tripod,
Yeah.
and just had them talk. And I just left it on my computer. And then when my dad passed, I shut down a lot of stuff with my business and just grieved. And I just got rid of the idea. And then I think it was a few months ago, I was talking to a really close friend, and that idea came back because I was telling her, I said, I don't think people realize the power of what they have inside of them. I said, I don't think that they get it. I said, because when I'm talking to people about what I do, right? So many people will say, oh, I've always wanted to write a book, or, oh, I've been through so much in my life, or I know someone who has such a great story. And I'll always follow it up with, well, what are you doing with it? And then following that are like a lot of really valid excuses, like some things that they say, okay, I get it. But it doesn't dismiss them from the responsibility that comes with the power of their story, And at the same time, I felt like so many people were sitting on these gold mines inside of them, these stories. And I'm thinking, how many thousands, millions of people could benefit just from hearing this story, And I got frustrated because I felt like we think that a story is only valid if it's sensational and can go on ABC News, And while I honor those stories, there's people living everyday lives that are overcoming some really amazing things and have wisdom that they don't even realize that somebody on the other side of the planet needs to hear just to get through the day, And I was talking to my friend and I said, I'm going to do it. I had this idea a year ago. I sat on it. It's back. It's strong. I want to interview you. You'll be my first one. And she was like, well, how are you going to do it? I said, I don't know. We're just going to do it. I'm going to figure it out.
That's right.
And, Google is a very powerful thing. Most of the things that I've done up until this point is self-taught. I mean, like everything I've done with my business, self-taught. What I've done with ghostwriting, self-taught. So I get online and I'm like figuring out how to do lives and, like how to maneuver them. I set up a format and I started with my best friend and it went amazing. And like while she's telling her story, she started crying. And then I started crying. And then after her interview, I had people reach out to me. Thank you so much for featuring this. I really needed to hear that. And her story was not like, she was in the sex slave trade for 20 years and got out. Her interview was based on the fact that she had lived her life for everybody else for years and decided to stop doing it.
Yes.
It's so basic as that, right?
Yes.
And the amount of responses I got, I'm like, these are the type of stories that everyday people are dealing with, and they want to know you're not alone. Somebody's either in the middle of it, they're coming out of it, or they're getting ready to come in it. And when you hear something that you're going through that somebody else is going through, it takes away the stigma. It takes away the shame, the guilt, and the feeling that I got to hide this. So once I did that first one, I got so much energy because I'm learning. I'm like, oh man, if nobody gets anything from this, I'm just going to do this for me because this is my classroom. You know what I mean? Like this is I'm growing. So then it started with me just contacting friends and getting my friends on. And then after that, it became people reaching out to me to get on my show and then people referring other people to me. So at this point, I mean, I've interviewed a few people from all over the world, like one guy, he's walking thousands of miles for peace across Europe. Another guy who found himself in a practically a landfill in the Philippines and decided to dedicate his life to helping these like children who are living in landfills in the Philippines. Like just people with phenomenal stories that you're not seeing on the news, but they're living it and they're overcoming so many obstacles in their life. And those are just the types of stories that I highlight as much as possible.
And it's really just to remind people like what's possible, these gifts within themselves, these treasures, to own the influence that they have, the value that they have to give to the world. It's like their own gifts. Like there's no judgment on, if you see a sports star, earning millions of dollars because they've developed their capacity to do that. And, they're always on TV and all this kind of stuff. Like just because they demonstrate what's possible doesn't mean you have to do what they did. Like we can still be an influencer, an inspiration, contribute, share our wisdom, share our journey, and just like really connect with people and shine our light in their lives and give them permission to share whatever they're going through, to like embrace their humanity. I think that's what a lot of people are struggling with, is to embrace their humanity and their emotions, and like they feel like they can't just be. And I think that interviewing people like you're doing is just giving people permission to say whatever your passion is, whatever your walk of life is, it's perfect. Now, how do you understand yourself more? How do you show up as the best version of yourself in the pursuit of wherever you're at?
Yeah. I do a interactive workshop. So it's called Free Your Story, Free Your Life. And one of the things that I have them do is we create a timeline of their life. Mm-hmm. And the timeline is just what major events do you remember? And they can be triumphant, they can be embarrassing, they can be low moments. And after they create their timeline, I have them go through and identify what were some of your most traumatic moments. And next to those traumatic moments, I have them put a star. And I said, so then from that point forward in the seminar, we don't call our trauma traumatic moments, we call them star moments. Because what I believe is that the things that we are usually the most ashamed of and our places of greatest pain are usually the places that we are tasked to teach from. That's usually where our life's message is. That's where we're learning the most, right? So like in my moments of greatest failure and in my moments of deepest trauma, like starting over and coming to St. Pete and losing everything. It was extremely traumatic. That whole event was very traumatic. But in the midst of that, it pushed me to learn more about myself, to learn about forgiveness, to learn about relationships. Like everything that I lost, it's like it slowed down my life. It made me really take stock. It made me ask myself hard questions. I mean, like those were some of the most powerful moments of my life. And so much of what I teach and what I believe comes from those moments, because I had to stop. I had to learn. I had to grow. Even with my dad's passing, he passed very unexpectedly. It was, any death is traumatic, you know, but it was just the details of it were very traumatic. And it was, and still is, one of the most difficult journeys that I've ever had to take. Grief is one of the most difficult journeys. But when I tell you that I'm not the same person today that I was over a year ago when he passed, because I've been forced, it puts you in the fire of learning to like really examine yourself, the world, look at life from a different perspective.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes people discredit the most important parts of their story. Like they think a story is only validated when you can share the perfect moments of your life, when you can share the big learning moments in your life, when really the things that usually offer us the most value are the lowest moments, are the moments that we're not the most proud of. But those are really what make us human, and what makes me connect to you anyways.
Yep.
Because I don't get a life of pure perfection. I don't resonate with that at all. I resonate with your failures. I resonate with your downfalls and your embarrassments and the things that you aren't the most proud of. I resonate with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find it's hard to get people to open up about those things, those traumatic moments? Is it difficult, or would you say you're a natural, so to speak, or it's easy for you to create a safe space for them to share that?
So, yes, I feel like it's easy. I don't want to say easy.
Okay.
I find that sometimes people are just waiting for you to give them permission. And I think one of the best ways to give people permission is to be the first one to be vulnerable, which I think is sometimes difficult for people, especially, and I tell this a lot to people who hold any form of leadership role or they influence in any sort of way. I always say that when a leader fails to be a student anymore, you lose touch with the people that are following you. You become irrelevant, because now it's like this, I'm here, I'm up on this level and you're down here, and it creates this like intimidation, you know. But every time I talk to people, specifically when I'm doing workshops or creating an environment for people to share, I usually make it a point to share a lot about myself so that they know it's safe here. Like it's safe for you to be you here, and that there's a lot of freedom that comes with it. And I think sometimes, even in personal relationships, you can't ask something of somebody else that you're not willing to give first, you know? So like vulnerability is so important in any story, any connection that you have. But when you are able to do that first, you give the other person permission. You say, this is the type of environment that I'm going to create. I'm not going to wait on you. I'm going to create it, because I don't feel comfortable in inauthentic environments where we have to fake it and pretend and hold pieces of ourselves back. So let me be the vulnerable one and let you know it's safe here for you to be you and for you to share whatever you feel necessary to share.
Wow. It's powerful. I think that people are trying to live up to an incredibly high standard, that perfection, you know, trying to constantly be there and going back to the humanity, just allowing themselves to express that. But I also love what you do as far as helping people to write it down, to get it outside of themselves so they can become more objective towards it. They can release it like you said you did, you know, and really get power over their story, to free themselves from their story, from the prison that they've, you know, mental prison that they found themselves in, so that they can create a new story.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people, I have a lot of my clients when we're first doing the planning process of their story.
Mhm.
I have them talk out so much of their story first, because there's a difference between when somebody just writes as opposed to when they're just talking, right? So if I'm just talking to you right now,
Mhm.
it's stream of consciousness. As it comes here, it comes out here.
Right.
And I'm not overthinking it. I'm in the moment and I'm talking. But if you were to email me these questions and I now have to sit down and write, it's going to take me much longer. I'm going to question myself. I'm going to go back, try to make it perfect, whatever that looks like. And I stumble with it. So a lot of times when I'm taking people through the process of their story, however they're doing, if they're writing a book or if they're in one of my workshops or if I'm coaching them, I have them do a lot of talking. I just ask questions and I just let them flow. And what I have found so amazing is that people will say something out of their mouth and they'll be like, "Whoa, I never said that before. I never thought of it that way." And that's a very powerful thing, because like I said, it's the same thing, writing it and speaking it. You've lived it, you've experienced it, but sometimes you haven't let yourself feel it. You haven't even let yourself acknowledge it. I grew up in a home where it was like, something happened to you, you had a window of time to talk about it and to cry, and it was a small window, right? Small. And then once it was done, man, you better get over it. Shove it down. Keep it moving. Life keeps moving. And nothing. Like I said, I honor my upbringing, but I feel like that's a testament to how a lot of people grow up, is that you don't give yourself time to really feel what you've been through and reflect on what that's caused in you. How has that impacted your current situation? How has that impacted your past? And then, undealt with, how will that impact you moving forward? And it can just be a matter of a conversation. And it can be so simple. Like, I was helping a friend with she had to write a narrative for a college essay. And one of the questions was talking about something in your life that has happened that you misinterpreted, and you were able to see it from a different perspective. And when she was talking, she just kept saying, nothing really significant happened in my life. I haven't really done anything great. And I said, well, let's talk it through. Let's start in high school. What was high school like? Well, high school, I did okay. And then when I got out of high school, I tried this and I failed. And then I tried this and I quit. And then I tried this. And then she said, and now, now I'm starting school. And she said, I feel like I failed. I'm a failure. I said, well, let's just pause there. I said, because that's not what I'm hearing. I said, what I'm hearing is that you knew yourself well enough that you were in situations and you saw, this isn't for me, so I'm going to quit. I said, you didn't put yourself in a situation and make yourself stay because you were trying to please everybody else. You tried a career and you thought, man, this isn't me, I'm going to quit. I said, so what you see is failure, but what I see is courage. So sometimes it's just a matter of talking out your story and looking at it from a different perspective, and seeing man, if I had stayed in that career that I thought I failed at, right? If I had stayed there, what would my life be like now? Was that a failure, or was that a strategic move in which I was being true to myself? So sometimes it's a matter of talking out your story and allowing yourself to see it from a different perspective. And once again, taking those traumatic moments and saying, now it was painful, but man, that moment I needed, because then that moment took me here and then it took me here, So it becomes a very therapeutic exercise, where by the time we're done, she's in tears because she's able to see before we had that conversation, in her mind, she had nothing to speak of in her life that was a success or that was worthy of writing. But 10 minutes after just talking out her story and shifting her perspective and really seeing her life for what it is and celebrating where she's at, now it's, wow, I have been through some things. I have I should be proud of myself. I have wisdom and experience and knowledge. So that's a big part of working through your story as well, is just being able to talk it out.
Yeah, and it's having a safe space where that can happen, right? Like
Yeah.
for me, it's having coaches, seminar rooms have been really great for me as well, like being in a community, in a container where I felt safe. And yeah, some people might disagree, some people might blah blah blah, but I'm going to share my truth because it's important for me to just communicate what's on my heart, what's on my mind. And if I'm like filtering myself in at like everywhere, then I will never be able to be my true authentic self. So it's to get that practice, find people around us who we can just be ourselves with and share the uncomfortable stuff, share the stuff that we're ashamed of. You know, I've really made it a point to be like authentic, especially with coaches and people who I'm working with at a deep level, and like share it all. Like I'm just gonna let it loose. That's why you're here. That's why you are in my space. That's why I attracted you, because you're the perfect person at the perfect time to be sharing this with, you know, and just to give ourselves permission and not like be so hard on ourselves.
Yeah. Like, I'm never going to read the Twilight series. I'm just not. I'm not. You're never going to see me with a Twilight book in my hand.
Nope.
I'm not interested in that. That does not connect with me.
Yeah.
And I tell people the same thing when they're sharing their story. Everybody's not your audience. Like, the things you say in certain environments, some people are going to say, wow, that was amazing. That changed my life. And other people might ridicule you for it. Like when I released my book, there was a lot of my own personal story that people did not like. I had people call me and they rebuked me and they told me I shouldn't have written the book, and they were offended. They were offended by what I shared. And I remember, you know, when you're releasing your story, it's like your baby, you know, and you don't want someone to say your baby's ugly and they don't like your baby. So it broke my heart. And then I was like, should I have said it? And like, I'm questioning myself and I'm questioning, did I write it wrong? And I still question myself until I started to learn this, that everybody is not going to value your story for a variety of reasons. Some people, maybe they just don't connect with it. Some people maybe are struggling with their own truth, and your truth reminds them of what they need to address. And instead of them looking within, they choose to get angry in the exterior so that they never have to address them. It's easier for me to attack other people instead of look at my own self. So sometimes your story acts as a mirror to other people. And then you have times when you share your story and maybe your story includes other people and they get offended. But that's okay, because my story is my perspective. So if I told a story about me and my sister, right, it's going to be my perspective on how my sister acted, her role in that experience. And then she could come and tell the same story from her perspective, and the two stories can look extremely different. That doesn't make my story any less impactful, and it doesn't make her story any less impactful. It's my story. I get to own it. I get to tell it. So I think that's another like key, because so many people get fearful when they share their story because they're like, my story involves people and situations and circumstances. All of ours do. And what we have is our experiences and our perceptions. And when I release it into the world, I can't control how everybody's going to react to it. That's on them. They have to deal with that. You know, like this is my perception. And just because they have a different perception on that same experience, well, that's theirs to have, and that's okay. The most important thing is just owning your story without having to think about how everybody else is going to perceive it and how everybody else is going to respond to it. That's not your job. Your job is just to share your story. Let it go out as it will. Those who need it will hold on to it, and those who don't, it'll make them mad or they'll let it go. But either response is not your responsibility. Your only responsibility is to share.
That's right, Amy. This is gold. I want to wrap up with like, what is the call to action for people to share their story? Like, how do they do that? How do they take those next steps?
So, first of all, I think people need to know that your story should be the driver behind everything you do. Like, your story is the driver behind your career, behind your relationships. Like, it's essential to figure out how your story is playing a role in every area of your life. So there's so many areas that you can go with your story, but I think a major thing is that writing a book. And because we live in a society now where it's so easy,
Yep.
to write and publish a book. You can do it for like cost efficiency is just amazing. And you can do it to the point of having it on Amazon. So I would say if you are a person that has said consistently, I really want to write a book. I know, like, you have this pull inside of you. You know that there is a story inside of you that you need to share and you've just been sitting on it. I would just encourage you to take the next step, whether it be to contact me or contact a coach, somebody else, somebody you know. It's your responsibility. We need it.
Yeah.
You owe the world that story that's gnawing on the inside of you. So writing a book, if you don't want to tackle a whole book, start with writing blogs. There's online platforms. You can do blogs. You can do long form posts in your Facebook. You can do videos on IGTV. All of this for free. Figure out how you can just start chunking your story and just talking. Sometimes it's just a matter of talking your story out. So I think those are two major things. Like, definitely, if you want to write a book or that's something you're interested in, take the next step. Stop allowing yourself to question yourself out of it and having to know all the answers. It's okay to say I don't know, and it's okay to ask questions to figure out what those next steps will be, because it's easier than you think. And just making sure that you're sharing your story in as many avenues as possible.
Yeah, 100%. Amy, this is gold. I know there's people out there who want to share their story more, who want to find out more about your show that you do and how to get in contact with you. So let's let them know when your show is, how to find it, and how to get in contact with you and take those next steps.
Okay, so my show goes live on Facebook Mondays, Wednesdays, or Fridays. You just have to pay attention. I do a promo. I do a promo night before. So it'll say it on my Facebook page, and my Facebook page and my IG is Amy Kochek.
Okay.
So you can follow me there. You can look up my my business page, Amy Kochek Creative. I also go put my clips of the interviews there, and I also have a YouTube channel, Amy Kochek.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those things have the interviews on them. So even if you miss the interview live, I upload all of the interviews to my YouTube channel on Amy Kochek. I do clips on my IGTV. So yeah, that's a way to get in contact with me, to just consume the interviews. If you have a story that you want to tell and you want to share, please contact me. I'm always looking for people to feature. If you know someone, you can refer someone to me for the story. So we can do that. And then just contacting me in general through my Facebook and IGTV is Amy Kochek.
Boom shakalaka. Everyone follow and connect with Amy at Amy Kochek, and that's AMYKOCHEK. And definitely send an email to Amy if you want to find out more about her services, or contact her on any social media. And her email is yourstoryservices@gmail.com. Get in contact with her. And Amy, thank you so much for setting people's stories free in the world so they can heal, inspire, and move people to be their best selves.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for this opportunity and this platform that you do and what you do. So amazing.
Thank you.
So best of luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a lot for us moving forward. We're doing similar things, so I see a ton of synchronicity and synergy. So I'm sure this is just the beginning. Amy, have an amazing day, and we'll see you soon. Okay.
You too. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Bye bye.